Is this a real-life story of David and Goliath? Could this giant have fallen so hard that it's barely better than North America? Hello summoners and welcome to another ProGuides video. I'm Zyrene, and instead of talking about the meta, today we'll be looking at the fall of the LCK. Korea was the first truly dominant region in competitive League of Legends. So, what happened? How does one region go from being incredibly ahead of the curve to being unable to keep up? To see how the LCK went from top of the top to struggling to even reach semifinals, we need to take a quick look at their history in international competition. But before we get started, here's today's question of the day. Which region has the most entertaining games? Please do let us know your answers and reasons in the comments below, and also make sure to check out our Discord for coaching giveaways, tournaments, and other fun events with our community. And while you're at it, check out ProGuides.com, where we have live classes with players like Mike Young, a roster of top-tier coaches ready to work with you instantly, and entire courses from your favorite pros like Doublelift. The link for both of those can be found in the description box under the video. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Korea's reign truly began in Season 3, when SKT came onto the scene and won Worlds. This is also when Faker became known as a god, being hailed as the best League of Legends player of all time. After this event, Korea went on to win Worlds every year through Season 7, with Seasons 5, 6, and 7 having two Korean teams duking it out in the finals. MSI saw a similar story, with SKT T1 barely losing to EDG in Season 5, and dominating the event for the next 2 years. Whether you're just looking at results or analyzing and comparing their gameplay to other teams in those times, anyone can tell that Korea was hands down the best region in the world. And then, Season 8 happened. When Kingzone lost to RNG at the 2018 Mid-Season Invitational in a 3-1 final, it was an upset, with it being Korea's first loss in an international final in 3 years. Despite the convincing score, it was brushed off as a fluke, since it had happened before, when SKT lost to EDG in the 2015 MSI Finals, but they went on to win Worlds, the more important tournament that same year. This year would be a different story though. Only two Korean teams made it out of groups, and both of those teams found themselves losing in quarterfinals. The LCK's journey in Worlds ended even lower than the LCS, with Cloud9 making a semifinals appearance. For years, people debated whether or not the gap between Korea and the rest of the world was even closing, so this, of course, shocked everyone. In Season 9, not much changed. At MSI, G2 won against SKT and went on to win against Team Liquid, who beat IG in their own semifinal match. This was the closest Korea looked to winning an international event in all of 2018 and 2019. On the stage of Worlds, all three Korean teams made it out of groups, but two of them lost in the quarterfinals, with SKT dropping a game to the LEC's third seed before losing hard to G2 in the semifinals. Once again, we saw an EU versus China matchup in the finals. For a second year, Korea wasn't even able to make it to finals to challenge China to win back the throne. After the recent mid-season cup, where the top 4 teams from the LPL and LCK all fight it out to see who the best of the best is, the results just confirmed what the past couple of years had already shown. China is defender of the title, and Korea is now just a challenger. Now that we're all caught up, we can try to analyze why this has happened. After the Mid-Season Cup, Cloud Templar had a pretty big talk on his stream about the current state of things. So, some of the points we go over are ones that he himself has brought up. To start things off, just looking at results from the most recent event, the Mid-Season Cup, things seem pretty bad for Korea. They struggled to make it out of the group stage for MSC, with only Genji making it to semifinals, where they were steamrolled in a 3-0 sweep. Looking past the result numbers though, and to the gameplay itself, the games were hard stomps, with the LPL team snuffing out any chance that their LCK competitors had of winning by the middle stages of the game, building massive kill and gold leads and proving that they were better at pretty much every aspect of the game. This shows that it isn't just a set of close games or a fluke. The reality is that the LCK is just not as good as the LPL. To know why they are struggling, we should first look at why they were dominating. Mechanically speaking, individual players at the top of all major regions have been relatively close in skill, though of course there have been superstars, like Faker, Khan, and the Shy, who dominate their lane opponents. What set Korean teams apart from the rest of the world in Seasons 3 to 7 was their insanely steady macro gameplay. Their methodical approach to building small leads and pushing those leads by extending vision, counter-jungling, and taking objectives resulted in a safe, efficient way of choking their opponents out until there was no way for them to fight back. Their strength was also a hidden weakness, since the only competition Korean teams had were other Korean teams. Their playstyle never really got to change, since they had no need to learn something new. While the LCK teams kept trying to minimize mistakes, other teams evolved their own unique playstyles, innovating ways to overcome the title holders. The result was that the Korean style of League of Legends was playing as close to perfect as possible, with Cloud Templar saying, "We play so that we can win if we don't make mistakes." In other words, we were playing to not lose, while others were playing to win. In the current day, now that the other major regions have caught up, this is one of the reasons Korea has struggled to fight for a top spot. They simply don't have the risky playstyle it takes to innovate and break down the wall separating them from the top. When we analyze the Chinese style of League of Legends, we see that they have always been super aggressive, with much more fighting in lanes and skirmishing going on. This aggression would sometimes result in them brute forcing wins, as we saw in the 2015 MSI. But with a lack of macro, it was too inconsistent to regularly get results against other teams, especially Korea's clockwork approach in international showings. Once more, money was put into other regions. Coaches from Korea followed, bringing their macro knowledge with them. As Cloud Templar put it, if LCK macro had a score of 95 and a mechanical score of 80, they could easily just win through strategy against the LPL, who had a macro score of 70 and a mechanical score of 80. However, due to their constant aggression resulting in non-stop skirmishes, the LPL teams would see their mechanics go up to a 95, while their macro was raised to a 90, thanks to the Korean coaches bringing up their macro game. Riot has also pushed for macro to be less of an end-all be-all way to play League, so that 5-point difference in macro doesn't mean as much. While having strategy should be and definitely is a factor in competitive games, the idea is that there should be much more fighting going on rather than every game being a low kill count game of chess, so the games are shorter and more fun to play and watch. Previously, an LCK team may have picked scaling and relied on macro to bait their opponents, giving up something on one half of the map while gaining a bigger advantage on the other side of the map, allowing them to reach their endgame and consistently secure wins. Now, with the super aggressive early game of Chinese teams resulting in huge early leads and using those leads better, as well as macro overall being a less important factor than it was in the past, Korean teams struggle to win when they are constantly playing off the back foot. When Chinese teams were forcing their aggressive playstyle and integrating macro into it, they didn't see immediate success. In the 2016 Worlds, they didn't even get a team into the semifinals. In 2017, their success was starting to show, as the gap closed and 2 LPL teams made it to the semifinals, both losing to their Korean opponents. Since then, China has won 1 MSI and both Worlds events, as well as the aforementioned MSC. So why can't LCK teams reverse engineer what the LPL did? If Chinese teams took their aggressive playstyle and leveled up their macro, why can't Korean teams add hyper-aggression to their already strong strategic gameplay? If the LPL took years to build up their counter to the LCK, then the LCK needs to put in the same type of effort to take their spot back. Cloud Templar gives one huge reason that the LCK is struggling to move in this direction. To be able to push themselves out of their comfort zone, they would have to take up the high-risk, high-reward playstyle of forcing fights over their standard super safe gameplay. On an individual level, these players are trained to not make risky plays, and it's hard for a player to simply overcome their instincts telling them to avoid a fight. While Chinese teams poured more money in and sacrificed a couple of seasons for a better future, ending up in the top spot now. Korean teams are very focused on their current season, and they don't want to risk being relegated, with players fearing not being picked up by another team if that happens. Instead, they stick to their standard playstyle and just try to outdo their domestic competition. So the issue isn't that LCK teams aren't unable to catch up because of a skill deficit, but more that they are afraid to take the risk that bridging the gap would require. Moving on, another point that Cloud Templar brings up is the benefits of having so many skirmishes. Not only are players mechanically better, but players in all roles have become able to consistently engage fights, where in the LCK, fights are dictated largely by the engage of tanks. Think things like Sejuani, Ornn, and Maokai. LPL players are able to force fights with champions like Syndra and Lee Sin with ease, and the supports are especially good at pulling the trigger to start a fight. When we look at the LCK, where fights tend to happen around objectives, the call after the fight is always the same. The winning team takes the objective and resets to get back on the map. Due to the high frequency of fights happening almost at random, LPL teams have the opportunity to find new ways to push a lead. Where most teams want to set up a 1-3-1 in the mid-game and play macro from there, LPL teams use their early skirmishes to break mid-turrets quickly, preventing a safe 1-3-1 from ever happening. This is a perfect example of the previously mentioned blending of aggression and macro. One last major reason as to why China has overwhelmingly swept Korea to the side is due to their model for success. As we mentioned before, Korea is focused on the here and now. Everyone is afraid of being last in the region, so no one is willing to take the risks that they need to be the best in the world. The LPL teams found themselves constantly investing more money into a far-sighted plan. They built up academies and their infrastructure, recruiting some of the best coaches and players, and every time they lost, they put more time, more effort, and more money into the system until they reached the point that they are now. Though we've pretty much just been talking about LPL replacing LCK as the world's best region, it's actually worth pointing out that this doesn't just mean Korea moved down to second place. The West isn't out of the competition by any means. Europe has always been a strong contender, vying for second place up against China during Korea's reign. Just as the Chinese teams kept striving to improve, trying new strategies, and building up their resources, their LEC competitors have done their best to keep up, surpassing LCK and putting up a fight in the last two World Finals. Even North America, who's largely regarded as the worst of the four major regions, has been able to foster talent in Cloud9, which many international teams respect as a contender at Worlds. Now that power has shifted and the grip that Korea had has definitely been broken, some people would say international events have reached a healthier competitive state. Worlds is no longer a matter of trying to figure out how any non-Korean team can take a game off of SKT or Samsung. It's more competitive and exciting to watch. Last year, Jack claimed that Worlds 2019 is no longer about who is the best region. It's about who is the best team. And that's what competitive League of Legends should be all about. And that's all that we have to say about the LCK's fall from greatness. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to let us know which region is your favorite to watch down below, and make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on tier lists, upcoming changes, the best champions to climb with, and other great content like this.